I started driving a semi in 1995 because I could not stay in my own house for more than an hour without feeling crushed. Before that, I worked at a feed supply warehouse outside Macon, Georgia. I had a wife, a little girl, and a routine. My daughter, Ellie, was 7 years old, loud and funny, and always singing. I thought it would last forever. Then, in the spring of 1994, a drunk driver hit my wife's car. My wife survived. Ellie didn't. There is no neat way to say that. It ruined everything in slow motion. Our home stopped feeling like a home. Ellie's bedroom stayed untouched for nearly a year. I would stand in the doorway and stare at her things. Honestly believe I might hear her humming. My wife, Sandra, left in early 1995. No screaming, no big scene. She packed a suitcase and said, "I can't die in this house with you." A month later, I signed up for CDL classes. I told people it was for the money, but really, I wanted distance. Trucking gave you that in the 90s. No smartphone, no GPS, just a road atlas, paper logs, truck stop coffee, and a CB radio if you felt like hearing a human voice. The road did not fix anything, but it gave me long stretches where I only had to think about fuel, weather, and miles. This happened in November of 1997 on a run through southern Arkansas. I was hauling paper products west. It was a cold, drizzling night, running late because of a wreck outside Little Rock. Dispatch sent me down a state highway. It was one of those roads that felt forgotten the second you got on it. No gas stations, no towns, hardly any houses. Just black fields, tree lines, and the occasional church sitting back from the road. It was a little after 1 in the morning. I had the heater running low and the radio off. The only sounds were the wipers, the engine, and the hiss of tires. Then the CB clicked on by itself. I glanced at it and said, "You got one." For a second, and there was only static. Then I heard a little girl whisper, very clearly, "Daddy?" I went cold all over. I stared at the radio. I told myself it was another driver's kid playing with the mic. That happened sometimes. Then the voice said, "Daddy, are you mad at me?" My hands started shaking. A week before Ellie died, I had snapped at her for spilling orange juice in my truck. Nothing terrible, just a tired father getting annoyed. She had looked up and asked, "Daddy, are you mad at me for real?" I remembered it because after she died, little moments like that never left me. I picked up the mic. "Who is this?" Static hissed. Then the same little voice said, "I'm sorry about the truck." I nearly swerved into the shoulder. No one knew that story except me, Sandra, and my dead daughter. "Whoever this is," I said, "cut it out." The CB went silent. For the next couple of miles, there was nothing but rain. I drove with both hands tight on the wheel, trying to talk myself back into something reasonable. Coincidence, bad signal, my brain filling in the rest. Then the radio crackled again. This time Ellie was crying, small, shaky sobs, the kind a child makes when they are trying not to cry too hard. "Daddy," she said. "It's dark." I actually said her name out loud. Before I could stop myself, that was my mistake. And then her voice came through stronger than before. "I knew you'd answer." I dropped the mic into my lap. Ahead of me, near a fence gate, I saw a small figure in a light-colored dress standing by the shoulder. My chest tightened. As I got closer, I realized it was not a child, at least not exactly. It had the size and shape of one. but it stood too still, with both arms hanging straight down and its head tilted just a little too far. I did not slow down. As I passed, I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel it there on the shoulder watching me. The CB clicked again. "Why didn't you stop?" That was Ellie's voice, but not Ellie's tone. There was something mean in it now, something patient. I kept driving. Then it giggled. It still sounded like her voice, but not like a child's laugh anymore. It sounded like an imitation. I reached over and turned the volume knob all the way down. The radio kept talking. "You left me alone." I yanked the cord from the CB so hard it smacked the dash. The voice did not stop. It was no longer coming from the speaker. It was coming from the empty passenger seat. I looked over without meaning to. Nothing there, just my denim jacket and a folded road atlas. But the voice was right beside me, close enough that I could hear the little catches in its breath. "Daddy, look at me." I clenched my jaw and stared at the road. Up ahead, maybe half a mile away, I saw a light. One lonely yellow light. A building, maybe people. The voice sharpened. "Look at me." Then louder, "Look at Aunt Me." At the same moment, the dash lights flickered. The cab went dark for half a second, then bright again. In that brief, dim reflection, I saw a face in the passenger window. Not Ellie's. It wore her haircut and the rough outline of her little face, but the eyes were too deep, the smile too wide, and there was something old in it. Something that had learned her voice before it learned the rest of her. I shouted and hit the brakes harder than I meant to. The truck fishtailed on the wet road before I got it straight. The yellow light ahead turned out to be a run-down gas station, with one pump and a soda sign blowing in the window. I swung into the lot so fast I almost clipped the ice machine. The moment I stopped, the voice disappeared. Not faded. Disappeared. Inside, an older man in a seed cap stood behind the counter, reading a newspaper. He took one look at me and set it down. I asked if there was a church nearby. Not police, not a phone. A church. He studied me for a second and said, 3 miles back there's a Baptist church by the crossroads. Why? I told him what I had heard. Not that it was my daughter's voice, just that something on the CB knew things it should not know. He listened the whole time. Then he nodded in a way I hated immediately, because it was the nod of a man hearing something familiar. He said drivers had talked for years about that stretch of road. A few men had wrecked out there. One disappeared after pulling over. Truck found the next morning. Driver never was. I asked him what it was. He said, "I don't know, but it knows grief when it hears it." I stayed under that gas station light until sunrise. In daylight, everything looked smaller and more ordinary. The road looked harmless. The fields looked empty. For a few minutes, I almost convinced myself it had all been exhaustion and old pain. Then I opened the passenger door. Lying on the seat, on top of my road atlas, was Ellie's pink butterfly hair clip, the one she had worn the day she died. I had not seen it in 3 years. I left it there all the way to Texas, because I could not make myself touch it. People ask why truckers get superstitious, why we avoid certain roads after midnight, why some of us still reach for the CB when the weather turns bad. It is because once in a while, out on a lonely highway, something answers back in a voice that should be gone forever. And if you love that voice enough, it knows exactly how to make you listen. My name is Dale. I started driving long haul in 1986, not because I loved the road, but because I couldn't stand my own house anymore. The year before, my marriage had started coming apart, and around the same time, my mother died slow from cancer. Watching that changed something in me. After the funeral, I remember standing in my kitchen at midnight, hearing the refrigerator hum, feeling like I was already haunting my own life. So when a friend told me a freight company out of Colombia was hiring, I took the job. I told people the pay was better. Truth was, I needed distance. Back then, trucking was different. No GPS, no phone in your pocket, just paper logs, burnt coffee, road maps, and long black miles that felt older at night than they ever did in daylight. Once the sun went down and the town thinned out, the road stopped feeling like it belonged to people. The night I saw what I saw was in the fall of 1988, running south through a mountain stretch in Tennessee with a loaded trailer and no time to spare. It had rained earlier, and the road was still slick. The sky was packed with low clouds, and the woods on both sides of the highway looked dense and airless like walls. My headlights caught the wet pavement in two pale strips, and everything beyond that was pure dark. It was after midnight. I hadn't seen another vehicle in 15 minutes. That was what made me notice the hill ahead. At first, I thought there was a man standing on the embankment above the shoulder, maybe somebody from a broken-down car. But the closer I got, the less human it looked. It was too tall by just enough to feel wrong, like a man stretched slightly past what a man ought to be. It stood perfectly still against the sky, black and narrow. I eased off the throttle. My headlights swept higher as the truck climbed and the figure came into full view. It was wearing something dark and long, maybe a coat, maybe just shadow-shaped like clothing. Its arms hung at its sides, too long, hands open and still. Then the face caught the light. The skin looked gray-white, like damp ashes. The features were sharp and narrow, almost handsome in a dead way, but the eyes were so dark they seemed to swallow the light, not shadowed, not deep-set, just black. And above them, coming through the hairline, were two short curved horns. Not giant storybook horns, smaller than that. Worse because they looked real. Dark, smooth, and growing naturally from the skull. The thing turned its head and looked directly into the cab. Its mouth opened into a smile. That smile chilled me more than the horns did. It wasn't wild or animal. It was calm, certain, like recognition. As I came level with the hill, I saw the ground around. It was wrong too. The weeds and brush beneath it looked blackened flat, as if burned and rotted at the same time. The lower branches of the trees behind it were bare, though the rest of the woods still held leaves. It looked like decay had spread outward from where it stood. I passed it and checked the mirror. It was gone. For a second I thought I'd just lost it in the dark. Then I saw it again, farther behind me on the opposite shoulder, standing where there had been no time for anything to move. Same posture, same smile, same black eyes. A pressure built in my chest then, something deeper than fear. I knew, with the kind of certainty that doesn't come from reason, that I was looking at something unholy. I kept driving. The road bent through the trees, and I told myself it would be over after the next curve. But on the next straight stretch I saw it again. This time it was closer, standing just beyond the white line, turned slightly toward the road as my truck approached. The horns showed plain now. The face looked less human than before. The cheekbones too sharp, the jaw too fine, the mouth stretched wider than seemed natural. I could see small pale teeth, too even and too many, like polished slivers of bone. The darkness around it looked heavier than the rest of the night. My headlights still lit the road, but the air around that thing seemed thicker, like the dark leaned toward it. Then it stepped forward one pace, just one. Its foot landed at the edge of the pavement, and I saw the shape of it. In the light, long, pale, and split at the front like a cloven hoof, drawn into something almost human. I swerved so hard the trailer pulled against me. Somehow I kept the truck upright and moving. In the mirror, I caught one last glimpse of it turning to watch me pass. And behind it, for the briefest second, I saw more shapes standing back among the trees. Not one, several, tall, thin silhouettes with the same unnatural stillness, waiting just beyond the reach of the road. By then, I was shaking so badly, I could barely hold the wheel. I started checking the mirrors every second, then forcing myself to look forward again. I came around a shallow bend and found it standing in the middle of the highway, not walking into my lane, just already there, head slightly bowed, arms loose at its sides, waiting. I hit the brakes hard enough to feel the trailer shove forward. The tires screamed on the wet road. For a second I was sure I would jackknife and die right there, but the truck held, shuddering to a stop maybe 40 feet from it. My headlights poured over the thing. That close, there was no room left for denial. Its skin had a cracked, dry texture, like old leather stretched over bone and singed at the edges. The horns rose clean from the forehead, black and glossy. The eyes were pits. The chest moved wrong, expanding too slowly, as if breath itself was something it had learned to imitate. Then a smell came through the vents. Burnt meat, wet dirt, something rotten and furnace hot. I couldn't move. I just sat there gripping the wheel, while it looked at me like I was already claimed. Then it lifted one arm and slowly turned its hand palm up, like it was inviting me closer. That was when I broke. I shoved the truck into gear, dropped the clutch wrong, lurched forward, and swerved around it onto the shoulder. Gravel exploded under the tires. Branches scraped the trailer. I shot past with only a few feet to spare, and as I did, I turned my head without meaning to. Its face was right there beside my window. Not possible, but it was still smiling. Horns gleaming, eyes black and bottomless. And in that instant, the smile changed from calm to hungry. I drove another 20 miles before I found a gas station, still open. I pulled under the canopy, climbed out, and threw up beside the diesel pump. The old man inside asked if I'd been drinking. I told him no. I asked if there was a church nearby, and something in my face must have stopped him from asking questions. I quit over-the-road trucking before Christmas. I still drove local for a while after that, but I never took another mountain run at night. Even now, all these years later, there are times when I'm on a back road after dark and catch a shape standing on a hill or between two trees, just for a second, and every hair on my body rises at once. People talk about the devil like he comes with noise and fire and warning. That isn't how it felt. It felt old, patient, like something that had been walking those roads long before trucks ever touched them, and would still be there long after. And what scares me most is this: when it looked at me, it didn't look curious. It looked like it knew exactly who I was. My name is David Breckenfield. I started driving long haul in 1993, right after my divorce and a factory layoff in Dayton. I told people I liked the freedom of the road. Truth was, I just didn't want to be home with my own thoughts. By 1997, I'd been on enough back roads to know when a place felt wrong. That happened in West Virginia late one night after a wreck forced me off the interstate and onto a narrow mountain road. No GPS back then, just a paper atlas on the seat and bad luck. It had been raining for hours. Not a hard rain, just a cold mist that blurred the windshield and made the trees look soft and shapeless in the dark. The road wound through the hills with no lights anywhere, just the hum of the tires and the wipers scraping back and forth. Then I saw the sign. It was a crooked wooden board at the edge of the road, hand-painted in white. "Welcome to Black Hollow," under that, in smaller letters. "God still sees you." My headlights caught it for only a second, but it left a bad feeling in me. The road dipped into a little valley, and the town came into view below. It barely looked lived in. Maybe a dozen sagging houses, a leaning church with no cross on it, and one old store with a yellow light over the door. Everything else was dark. That was when I saw the first one. A man was standing barefoot in the mud beside a mailbox, shirtless in the cold, staring at my truck as it rolled by. He was thin as a fence post and standing perfectly still. He didn't wave, didn't blink, just watched me. A few seconds later, I saw two more on a porch, then another shape in a yard. The farther I rolled into town, the more of them I noticed. They were everywhere, not moving much, not talking, just standing in the rain and dark, facing the road like they'd all heard me coming long before I got there. There was something deeply wrong about them. A few looked so alike they could have been copies of the same person. Same pale skin, same flat expressions, same narrow faces and washed-out eyes. One woman smiled as I passed, and even from the cab I could see her teeth were brown little pegs. A teenage boy beside her had one eye drifting sideways and his mouth hanging open. An old man stood in the doorway of the store with his head tilted too far to one side, like his neck had set wrong years ago. I kept driving, but real slow now. A pair of children standing ankle-deep in a ditch, barefoot and dirty, both staring. A tall man with one arm shorter than the other, standing behind a rusted swing set. None of them moved until my truck passed. Then I'd catch them in the mirrors, all turning together to keep watching me. That was the part that got to me. Not that they stared, that they all stared at the exact same speed. I never even shut the engine off. I rolled past the store, meaning to keep going, but curiosity got me for a second, and I glanced through the dirty front window. There were shapes hanging in the back room from hooks. Long pale strips, wet-looking, red at the ends, maybe meat, maybe not. Then my headlights shifted and lit up the road beyond town, and I saw something that made my hands lock on the wheel. There were more of them ahead. A whole line of figures standing along both sides of the road at the far end of Black Hollow, half hidden in the mist. Men, women, children. Too many, just waiting there in the rain facing me. I looked in my side mirror. The ones behind me had stepped off the porches and out of the yards. They weren't rushing. They weren't waving. They were only walking slowly toward the road, like they knew I had nowhere else to go. I hit the gas. As the truck picked up speed, my headlights swept across their faces one last time. I remember a little girl in a stained nightgown standing barefoot in the gravel with mud on her legs, smiling too wide. I remember an old woman on a porch rocking in an empty chair, though the chair itself wasn't moving. I remember a man crouched on the roof of a shed like an animal, his eyes shining for half a second in the beams. And I remember how none of them flinched when 18 wheels thundered past. Figures filling the road, gathering in yards, standing shoulder to shoulder under the yellow store light. All of them turned toward my trailer as I climbed out of the valley. The next morning in daylight, it sounded crazy, even to me. But I bought a fresh West Virginia map anyway and checked every road I'd taken. There was no Black Hollow. A year later, I ran that route again during the day, just to prove I'd imagined it. I found the stretch of road. I found the valley. Just weeds, broken foundations, and wet, empty land. Hollow. And even now, when I pass through mountain roads at night and see a porch light burning by itself in the rain,